I'm going to share what is in this book and what you can expect if you pick it up and why it might be interesting or relevant. It really starts with the quote that is right behind me, which is, I try to be innovative once, but I get stuck in meeting. It's a quote I've been hanging on my wall for many years now. And it really describes some of the frustration that I had when I was working in companies. It's the state of the workplace in many areas where if you really have a good idea, can you actually get it done? Can you bring your idea to life, or are you going to get stuck in meetings? I'm going to talk to you about the 6 most common organizational blockers, because that's roughly the structure of the book. So over the years, I've been experimenting with lots of different ways of working and constantly bumped into these 6 areas that companies somehow get stuck in. And the book is a practical guide for leaders that have a specific goal in mind that they want to achieve, and they can follow the advice in the book to get unblocked in these 6 areas. And in this presentation, I'm going to go through these 6 areas and give you a sense of what's in there. First of all, I know a lot of the people that are here are coaches, are organizational developers, leadership developers, and a lot of the ideas that are in the book are not new. They are based on ideas and practices from other streams of thought and other people. And I've thankfully tried to remix everything that we discovered worked when trying to get better results. So if you pick up the book and you're interested in these things, you'll recognize some things, but it's not an explanation of all of these things. It's really focused on practical things that leaders can try. Let's dive into the first bit, which is unblocking strategy. So a couple of things that we hear often when it comes to strategy, when strategy is blocked, is we're doing too many things at once. We don't know how to prioritize. And there's, in general, a misalignment between strategy and action. In the book, I'm offering advice on how to craft a strategy that actually creates alignment and focus at scale. Because often it's the strategy itself that is blocking the organization from achieving the desired results. So here's a funny comic that I also used in my book. Our vision statement is to suck less than last year. Our management likes to keep it real. Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of the mission or vision or purpose or strategy statements that we see out there are not really helpful things that help you achieve your goals. So they often take this form. So here's another example from Barnes & Noble's, a big US-based bookstore, is to operate the best omnichannel specialty retail business in America, helping both our customers and booksellers reach their aspirations while being a credit to the communities we serve. Yeah, great. But it won't help you become the best in the market. It also won't help you focus your work in the day-to-day area. The other form I often see strategies take is our strategic plan for 2025 is and on a whole list of projects. Often these strategic plans, they become just a to-do list of everything we want to achieve in this year. And strategy is neither of those. Although the last one will help you create focus, it won't help people to think smartly about what really matters. The strategy really should not only focus the energy of the company, it should also be a plan of how you believe you're going to win in the market. So whatever your goal is, if you want to become the largest company, or if you want to transform your organization towards sustainability, or whatever it is, a strategy should be your hypothesis of how you're going to win and how are you going to achieve that goal. And that means you have to first be aware of all the obstacles and understand why we need to overcome them. And then you have to pick and make a choice of what you're going to do and what you're not going to do. And that's what strategy is about. So here's an example. It's a fictive example. Imagine rubber work boots didn't exist yet. And there was once one first company who said the following: we have just discovered that rubber is lightweight, strong, cheap, and sustainably produced. So that's an insight. And our strategy then is to leverage the latest rubber molding technology, which is a capability to produce cheap, high quality construction shoes because nobody else offers them. So here's a winning plan. It's an hypothesis. And that also means that you can be wrong. So strategy should be testable. It should be something you can adjust if you discover that it actually doesn't work. All right. Another thing that we often see missing in strategies is choices. What is it that you choose to do? And what is it that you choose not to do? And one of our favorite practices are even overstatements, which are very simple, short phrases that makes clear what are we prioritizing. Here's a couple examples. So Amazon has been famous for prioritizing gaining market share even over making profit or making a margin. They cared mostly about volume and not so much about being super profitable, especially not in the first couple of years when they were growing. Rolls-Royce is a company that also doesn't care about mass market cars. They're really about creating the most luxurious, high quality thing out there, which is what they're known for. And the final example is Patagonia. So sustainability, even over profit, is a statement that they are famous for. And what I really like about that statement is that it allows people, it gives permission to everyone in the organization to make the sustainable choice rather than the profitable choice when they're faced with a day-to-day decision. So these statements are heuristics that enable teams to make the right choice themselves rather than having to ask for approval. They're formatted as one good thing even over another good thing because they should be reversible, so that if you reverse profit over sustainability, that is definitely some companies' strategy, right? Part 2, steering, unblocking steering. So a couple of things that we often hear is that people and companies struggle to change course quickly, spending too much time in planning, and often don't even measure if what they're doing has an impact. They're delivering outputs, but they're not measuring outcomes. In the book, I offer all sorts of practices about setting effective goals, finding the right things to measure, and steering continuously. Because you know what? This is what we see leaders do very often behind closed doors, making the perfect plan and then trying to execute it. Well, obviously, the reality is that it looks more like this. There's high level of complexity. A lot of things are unpredictable. And the only way to execute well is to test and learn rather than to plan and predict. It reminds me of one of my favorite quotes of the boxer Mike Tyson, which is, everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face. Imagine, and I'm going to make this example even more ridiculous. Imagine you're going to do something completely new. You're learning how to ride a bicycle. You've never ridden a bicycle and you really want to. And as a Dutch person, this is something I can relate to. How do you learn how to ride? One approach would be what is resembled in a lot of organizations is that we're going to make a plan. We're going to, in a lot of detail, analyze how we're going to do that, at what steering angle we're going to go, what's the velocity, what's the speed, and at what moments in time are we going to course correct by what percentage. Of course, if you follow that approach, it's obvious that you're going to fall flat pretty quickly. So now here's an alternative approach. This is my lovely daughter, Femke. She is now almost 5 years old. And this is how she learned how to ride a bicycle. It is all about doing it and balancing and trying. And these bikes are nowadays without training wheels because we actually learned that the hardest thing to learn is how to balance. The only way to learn how to ride a bicycle is to fall on your face a couple times and get up and try again. This is what it looks like in organizations. And the book actually explains this in a lot more detail. It's another metaphor. Imagine you are a sailboat and you want to get to a certain destination, this beautiful strategic intent that you've set 2 to 3 years out. To continuously steer, you go quarter by quarter. You set 90-day outcomes that you're chasing after. Then after that 90-day period, you see what you've learned, you reflect, and you pick your next course. Along the way, you'll uncover obstacles that you have to go around. And on a day-to-day basis, you use steering metrics to measure if you're going in the right direction. It's a set of practices that will help you continuously steer. And the even overs that you also see on this picture, they constrain the movement and they reduce the amount of options that we have because we said we're not going to make metal boots, we're going to make rubber boots, right? So this is the choice we're making. Next chapter, one of my favorite ones is Unblocking Decisions. So often we see companies struggle with decision making. We hear people say that it takes a long time to make decisions. We are risk averse when we suffer from analysis paralysis. And if we make decisions, we make them far away from where the work actually happens, so far removed from where the information is. One study said that on average in many large organizations, it takes over 20 days to get approval for an unbudgeted expenditure. So imagine you have an opportunity, you see something that you want to leverage right now, or you have to change the investment you have. It takes 3 weeks to get that done. And that's often because we're bogged down in decision making. So instead, we offer a lot of things about improving the speed of decision making at every level and while increasing quality and inclusion. So ideally, you want more people participating in decision making while also increasing speed and also increasing quality. And it sounds almost like an impossible mission, but there are ways to do it. And I'm going to share a couple of things. The fun thing about writing a book is that you sometimes discover new things that you haven't heard before. And one of it is this funny picture. And it's from a blog post by James Clear. And he says there are 3 types of decisions, and they're hats, they're haircuts, and there are tattoos. When you're going to buy a hat and you don't like the hat, you can bring it back, get your money back, or you can just buy many different hats. The consequence of that decision is not long. But imagine you're getting a haircut and the haircut doesn't work out. You might feel embarrassed for a while. You might feel frustrated or sad about that. But within weeks, your hair grows back, at least for some people, not for me. So your haircut, it's a decision that has consequences, but not for long. So you can quickly do that. You don't need to analyze all possible haircuts that you can make and test all sorts of barbers. You can just go and make a good decision quickly. But there are also decisions that are tattoos, which means if you get it, you won't easily get rid of it. You can technically get rid of a tattoo, but it won't be cheap and it won't be easy. It will take a lot of time if it can happen at all. But the problem is many organizations treat most decisions as if they are tattoos, as if they are irreversible. So hopefully this language helps you distinguish the types of decisions that are worth bickering over and debating over. And you can take other decisions much more quickly and just try them out and see what happens. Another really helpful thing is making decisions looking for consent rather than figuring out, can we all agree on this? So with every decision, there is a personal preference, but there's also a range of tolerance and a range of objection. So in a range of objection, you say, I cannot work with this. So this is outside of my range of tolerance. And the thing we're trying to look at when we're working in decision-making in groups is making a decision which is not a personal preference, but you can work with it. You can live with it. So imagine we're buying a cake for our next big company party. Some people like apple pie and I really like carrot cake. And if we all want to 100% agree on what cake we're going to buy, it's going to be terrible because we won't be able to agree because everybody has their personal preference. We might quickly figure out that it's okay to buy at least a sweet cake. So we're not going to buy a quiche. But if somebody proposes to buy a cake with nuts in it, I will object because I'm allergic to nuts. So it's really about creating momentum by looking for a decision-making space within everyone's range of tolerance. And that really allows you to move a lot faster. And there's a magic word that we use for that, or magic phrase, which is it safe to try? So next time where you're making a decision, don't ask the question, do we all agree? But ask, is it safe to try? Which really is about figuring out the range of tolerance within everyone's decision-making. Next one is unblocking meetings. One of my favorite things, although not everybody's favorite thing. One study says that meetings take up 25 to 50% of people's time. And for managers, that can go up even to 80%. Unfortunately, when COVID hit, many people's calendars blew up. And most people are now 2.5 times more in meetings than they were before COVID. The other thing is that people want to decline over a third of their meetings, but don't, because they want to conform to organizational norms. Sometimes we hear people, well, if you want to have less meetings, just decline more of them or cancel a few of them. The problem is that doesn't work because the organizational norms, the organizational system hasn't changed. In the book, we offer ideas to get rid of useless meetings and replace them with carefully designed ones that create a heartbeat of progress. And it's important because having a dysfunctional meeting culture is associated with low market share and with bad outcomes. So yeah, this is a New Yorker comic that just came out last week. I don't get it. We had all those meetings. Like the meetings don't necessarily get you results and they might hinder you from getting results. And like I said earlier, if you don't change the organizational system, the meetings will grow back. And that's exactly what Gustavo Rossetti said. Meetings are like mushrooms. If you don't change the conditions, they will always pop up again. So it's really about figuring out where are these meetings coming from and what can we do systemically to help people to have less of them. I'm not a hater of meetings. I really love meetings. The problem is you want to have useful ones because there are a lot of things that are super helpful to talk about when you're working on a complex problem or you're working in a team. Here are 6 of the things that we suggest teams decide on and talk about, which is what do we define as success? What do we prioritize? What do we aim for? What do we measure? How do we work? How do we decide? And you can imagine if some of these things are unclear, it can actually create a lot of unuseful meetings. So, for example, if a lot of people don't know who is going to make what decision, there will be more meetings because we have to involve everyone or a lot of people. And hopefully then the person that is making the decision is there. So if you clarify how to decide, that reduces meetings. If you clarify what you're going to prioritize, that reduces meetings because you can say no to a lot of things because you know what, this is not our priority. We're just going to say no and not do that. That's the other thing that I suggest doing is really looking in the system of what are causing the unhelpful meetings to happen rather than encouraging people to decline more of them. The other thing is replace all of those not so helpful meetings with a set of helpful meetings. And that is what we call The operating rhythm, which is the rhythm of meetings that allow people to drive the work forward. There's an example rhythm in the book, which looks like this. On a quarterly basis, have a strategy meeting where you look at the strategic intent, update your 90-day outcomes, and even overstatements. The other one is the Unblock meeting. It's a weekly step-by-step meeting to review the outcomes and steering metrics and decide about actions. What are we going to do next? How are we going to move the work forward? A retrospective on a monthly basis to reflect on all of these and figure out, how is it going? Are we making progress? What is going well? What should we improve? What should we change? And finally, update those decision rights, roles, and other agreements via proposals on the governance meeting. The last bit about meetings is about leadership. In a podcast, Adam Grant asked Brene Brown, if the word leadership didn't exist, what would it be replaced with? And I thought her answer was brilliant, which was facilitation. I cannot overestimate the value of facilitation skills, not only facilitators, but also facilitation skills in leaders. It is really an undervalued skill. I think the companies that have high level of facilitation skills, they just get a lot more done because they're able to get better outcomes and insights from larger groups of people, and they just have a lot less digression and a lot more focus. So in the book, there's a whole chapter about facilitation and how leaders can actually teach and actually learn some of these skills and get better at them. We're almost there. Two more. Unblocking ownership. So here's a couple of things that we hear often. People ask permission before taking action. Everyone needs to be involved in everything. Our structures prevent us from doing what is right. If you're a leader and you want to set a course, you want to go to a certain direction, you're often frustrated that people don't follow you and don't take ownership, and you have to keep pushing and stuff. And that is not so nice. So in the book, we offer all sorts of ideas of how to develop a workplace where people happily take ownership and can do what is right for the organization. This is a common challenge. Imagine you bring a brilliant idea to a group and you get approval. Now we just need to run it up the management chain. So a death by 1,000 cuts is then what happens. The challenge with ownership is that ownership is not something that can be forced upon someone. You need to create an environment where people are able and willing to take it. And if your company looks like this, it won't happen. And it's confirmed by another piece of research that was done by Harvard Business Review, surveying more than 7,000 readers. It's pretty bad. Fewer than 10% can spend $1,000 without getting a sign-off. 96% of people said it was not easy or very difficult for a frontline worker to launch a new initiative if it requires a small team and a bit of seed funding. Only 11% agreed that they had substantial or complete autonomy to set priorities and decide work methods. And over 75% said that workers are either never or only occasionally involved in the development of major change initiatives. So imagine you work here, don't expect that people take ownership, right? And it doesn't have to be this way. There are many examples out there, and I outline a couple of them in the book, where people happily take ownership and they are completely enabled to do the right thing every day for their customers and to innovate and improve in the workplace. There's a lot of words about empowerment and about power. And I really like what Patty McCord, formerly Chief Talent Officer at Netflix, said. The reason we have to empower people is because we took that power away from them. Many organizations do not give a lot of space and permission for people to do the right thing every day. So don't expect them to be engaged, right? There's a lot of ways to flip this around. And you have to start from the assumption that it's not the people that is not taking the ownership, it's the system that's not enabling them to do so. The last one is unblocking teamwork. So a couple of things that people say is the elephant in the room is addressed, feedback is scarce, we rarely pause and reflect. In the book, we offer all sorts of ways to develop psychologically safe teams that master reflection, improvement, and feedback. One Google study happened a couple of years ago where they looked at 200 different teams across their organization, all sorts of teams across the globe, from San Francisco to Singapore. And they discovered the 5 dynamics of an effective team: dependability, meaning, structure and clarity, impact, and the biggest factor, most of you know this already, is psychological safety. Creating an environment where it's safe to share early, unformed ideas and are not afraid to be ridiculed for them, to speak up when you need to speak up, to say what it needs to be said, and to have tough conversations when necessary. The other thing they discovered is how is more important than who. Even when they have teams with high levels of highly talented people, the star performance, if they put them together, that doesn't guarantee that the team will work well. How the team works is more important than who's on the team. And that's why these factors are so important. Throughout the book, we have lots of different practices that help a team improve. In the book, I focus a lot on leadership teams and how they can adopt these things. And in the book, in the chapter on teamwork, we go into mastering a habit of feedback, of reflection, continuous improvement, and also empathetic conversations. For example, through personal user manuals where you share about yourself, how you'd like to work, and what others need to know about you before they can work well with you. And one of our favorite things is intentions, concerns, boundaries, dreams, which is a 4-part conversation. When they join a team or when the team launches a new initiative, they can share what do they intend to do, why are they there, what do they hope to achieve, concerns they may have, any boundaries they want to set, and any dreams they have. And this was developed by Bob Gower and Alexandra Jamieson. All right, hopefully this gives you an overview of what's in the book. These are the 6 areas where this book focuses, and it allows leaders to clear the way for results and develop a thriving organization. And you shouldn't believe us. We are consultants, so a lot of consultants say a lot of things, but this is some measurable results from one of our clients that has been practicing this for only 4 months. They discovered that the amount of times per month that their work was stalled due to lack of information went down with a third. The amount of times that work was slowed or blocked pending approval halved. The amount of ad hoc or emergency meetings per month almost halved. And every voice gets heard and is considered was reported to go up by 70%, which is a big factor in psychological safety. And this was a leadership team of a large logistical company. So yeah, only after 4 months, try these things out. They really work. Otherwise, we wouldn't have put them in the book. This book is self-published, meaning that we cannot leverage the marketing power of a traditional publisher. It really has to come from the community, from our network, from you, our readers and followers. It's super helpful if you can help spread the word